Hello friends! It's finally time to talk about the books that I read in April 2023. I'll kick things off by starting with the first book that I read in the month, and that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is just the dust jacket. One of my sisters currently has this book. You guys already know that Emily Henry is an author whose work I enjoy. I always get along with her writing style, and it's no different with this newest novel of hers. What gets to me the most about this one is the setting. I really enjoyed the sense of place that she grounded us with. It was also cool to get to know these characters. I didn't necessarily feel like I connected with individuals in this story as much as I did with them as a group. I like seeing the group dynamic, and I also liked the way that it commented on both romance and friendship in the story. This book from the very beginning gave me the it could be a very good movie vibe. Honestly, by the end I was a little emotional and a little teary. Once again, Emily Henry writing a book that I found compelling and really enjoyed. The next book I want to talk about is The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. I'd been meaning to read this one ever since it came out, but I finally got the chance to, and I listened to the audiobook for it, and it was really good. I had no clue, or had forgotten at least, the specifics of the story, but I did think the plot was really engaging, and I really liked the tiny bit of magic that she wove into the everyday. I was really swept away in the story because it feels very much like a mystery, but it also got kind of a thriller aspect to it. I liked seeing these different characters. We sort of get to know more about them through the course of the story, and that was really interesting too. It definitely went in a direction I didn't expect, and I honestly don't think I've read anything quite like it, so that was an interesting experience for me, and I definitely am glad I finally picked it up. I read a new release called The Grimoire of Grave Fates, which is edited by Hannah Alcaff and Margaret Owen. This is a series of interconnected stories by a variety of authors. It was set at a magical school, and it's a murder mystery. It reads towards the younger end of the YA spectrum overall, and I think that's why I read it so fast. I literally flew through that book. There was just enough there to hook me all the way through the end, but honestly nothing too memorable. I then read another book that I thoroughly enjoyed this year, Last Violent Call, which is by Chloe Gong, and this is also part of the Secret Shanghai universe. I am just a softie, so being reunited with the characters that these novellas are about, it was just such a joy. I loved spending more time with them. I loved getting to see them in a different light. It's honestly really a treat, and if you enjoyed the These Violent Delights duology and you also have read Foul Lady Fortune, you're definitely going to want to pick up these novellas. There's just stuff in here that you may want to experience, especially if you're a fan of any of the couples in the These Violent Delights duology. Honestly, this book just made me feel all the warm fuzzies, and isn't that what we just want sometimes, especially for characters that are so beloved to us. For Family Book Club in April, we decided to read The Reading List, which is by Sarah Nisha Adams. This had also come recommended by my friend Rachel. Honestly, I feel like I just picked this book up at the right time. I spent one afternoon just devouring the entirety of this story, and I kind of knew I would like it just based on the premise, but I didn't anticipate how drawn into the story I would feel and how emotional I would get about these characters and their lives and how that's playing out for them. It definitely also got me thinking about what a big impact books have in our lives. The things we read sometimes allow us to connect to other people, or to at least recognize and understand the things they're going through. I think that's one of the joys and the gifts that reading can give us. Experiencing that through the story was definitely a good reminder. It was also very heartwarming, and it just made me heart happy by the end of it, even though a lot of it also made me very sad. I then read a book in an ongoing series, Gilded Serpent by Danielle L. Jensen. This is the third full novel in the Dark Shores series. I've said it before, I don't know if I have already uploaded the video, but I've said it before, the series is so well constructed. Danielle Jensen's mastery of her storytelling really shines in the Dark Shores series. There's so much to commend about the world building, about the plot structure, about these characters. It is a masterpiece, and I genuinely feel like more people should read it. I have just loved getting so immersed in the series, and now that I'm all caught up, I'm dying for the finale. I just need to know how this all comes to an end, because it is a story where I really can't predict the outcome of it, and I love that. I love that these characters feel really alive and real to me, but also unpredictable, and that's always fun for me. Gilded Serpent in particular left such a strong impression on me because it's really compelling, but it was also super stressful just considering the situation that all of our characters are in. Every time I picked that one up, even though I was stressed and scared and worried for these characters, I also just couldn't put it down because it was just that interesting and that compelling, and the way it ends, oh my gosh, I need to know. I just need to know what happens next. I then read a romance novel, Business or Pleasure by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I have also enjoyed all of this author's adult work. Business and Pleasure is definitely not the exception to that because the premise is really fun and it's written in her signature charming way with a lot of banter and nuanced character work. I definitely felt all the feels while I was reading it. The only reason that it doesn't rank quite as highly as the other 2 books that she's released for me is because I didn't get as emotionally invested in Chandler and Finn. I found their stories to have relatable parts, and I also could very much sympathize with what they were going through, but I didn't feel that connection that I want to feel when I'm reading a romance novel. Still, it's a really fun read, and if you like her work or you find the premise intriguing, I definitely think you should check it out. I then picked up another novella, and it is A Mirror Mended by Alex E. Harrow. This is the second book in the Fractured Fables novellas. I picked this one up because my friend Lily recommended it, and I am glad she did because it was really cool to dive back into this world that Harrow had already set up in the previous book and to see what else she had in store for the main character Zinnia. There was a lot of fairy tale trope subversion in this one, which I am all about, and I also really liked the way that this had some interesting themes as well. It was a really quick read, honestly. I also read a new release called She is a Haunting by Trang Tan Tran. This is a YA horror book, which is not normally something I'd read. There's a lot to commend about this book. I found it super compelling once I'd started it and could not set it down. It inspired a sense of unease and imbalance, and I could feel like sort of a haunting feeling while I was reading it. Since this is the genre that it's written in, I'm assuming that is the point. There's definitely a lot of eeriness to it and a lot of horrific details. Other things that I found interesting apart from the eeriness of it, I like the complicated family ties between the main character Jade and her dad, and I like the mysterious air of the haunted house that they were in, and also the themes of queerness and colonization that were touched upon. There's a lot going on in this very short story, and while it didn't necessarily come together in a way that 100% worked for me, I could recognize that there was a lot of objectively interesting stuff that the author decided to include. It was just a very creepy horror book, at least for me. Like, it just, again, it gave me that whole sense of like, something creepy is happening. I finished another series in April. The series is The Inheritance Games. The Final Gambit is the 3rd book. And I really enjoyed how Jennifer Lynn Barnes ended this series. She actually stuck the landing pretty well. The thing that I've always loved about this series is how entertaining the twists and turns are, especially when it comes to the puzzles and the scavenger hunt aspect of it. In a way, it's like wish fulfillment, because when I was a kid, that was something I was obsessed with, like scavenger hunts and mysteries. There's a lot more drama between the characters or for some of the characters, but it does really work well for the type of story that it is. I actually am looking forward to I think it's a spin-off book that's coming next. I also finally read Babel by R.F. Kuang. As you can see, I tabbed it a lot. This one was definitely a book that did a number on my brain. I can see why a lot of people had a lot to say about it and why it had such an impact on many readers. I also like that it explores a variety of content when it comes to language and race and culture and history via the story of Robin Swift, who is our main character. I honestly had no idea where the story was going to go when I was reading it. I did enjoy following it through all the way to the end. For something that I was worried would be a little bit dense, I actually thought it was very readable. I loved the way that it's explored language and the nuances of that in translation. It's definitely something. I'm glad I read it at a time when my cousin was reading it too, because I feel like we had so much to discuss every time we had both arrived at the same part. While there is a lot of the thematic content that is a little bit on the nose on the page, I still thought it was really smart and it was making some pretty great statements. I also did a reread of Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is translated by Jeffrey Trosselot. I reread this one just because I was hoping to dive straight into the rest of the series, which I did not do. It was really nice just revisiting this because a lot of the themes really appealed to me at the time that I read it yet again. Like, I love that it invites readers to see how sometimes you just never know what another person is thinking and also feeling. I honestly just enjoyed revisiting this book and I look forward to rereading the rest. I also read a book called The Book Eaters by Sun Yedin. This one did not end up being my cup of tea, unfortunately. The best part of this book is the lore. I thought it was fascinating and it was a little bit dark and it's not really like anything I've encountered in any other fantasy book before. However, the way that this story was executed, just the writing style and the plotting and the pace, it just wasn't for me. That was the thing that made it drag a little bit and also feel a little underdeveloped. This is a relatively short fantasy read, so if you're looking for something in the veins of that, and it's also a standalone by the way, so if you're looking for something in the veins of that and you find the premise intriguing, you could still pick it up. Just take my thoughts with a grain of salt. The last thing I want to talk about is an entire entire series because I read the entire Trials of Apollo series in April. That includes The Hidden Oracle, which was a reread, The Dark Prophecy, The Burning Maze, The Tyrant's Tomb, and The Tower of Nero. I'm not gonna hold those off because it's like too heavy for me. I had read The Hidden Oracle, and at the beginning I wasn't sure I was gonna enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed the other series I read from Rick Riordan, but I shouldn't have worried because I did. I put off reading the rest of the series for years, right? And I kind of regret that. The series, again, delivered the usual hallmarks of a Riordan work. It had the dangerous quests, it had the funny one-liners, it had the melding of mythology into modernity. It included cameos from characters I had already met and loved. While it didn't ultimately end up eclipsing the love I have for the Heroes of Olympus or even the Percy Jackson series, it was definitely an emotional roller coaster ride. It was also very clever, and it was just fun to be on another Riordan-verse adventure, honestly, with new characters to like. It took me a couple of books before I really appreciated our main character, Apollo/Lester. I genuinely wasn't sure if I could ever come to feel as strongly about him and his companions in the series. They won me over at some point. I'm glad I finally finished the series. I'm glad I finally know how all of this comes to an end, and I can confidently say it has, once again, that clever storytelling style that Rick Riordan has shown us in his other books. Those are all the books that I read in the month of April. I did manage to squeeze in quite a fair amount of reading, which I was really glad about. I will see you guys with a new video soon. Bye!